In 2019, the South African Human Rights Commission declared the water in Hammanskraal unfit for human consumption. The samples were taken to the Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, which confirmed that some of the drinking water determinants can cause chronic health conditions to residents. And now, in the context of what we are seeing unfold, let's speak to Zamantungwa, Mbeki, acting Gauteng Provincial Manager at the South African Human Rights Commission, as well as Ayesha, who is an environmental scientist with AHL Water, and she's the director there. Thank you so much for your time to you both. I'll start with you, Zamantungwa. Given what the Human Rights Commission said in 2019 and subsequent years even after that, given the situation in, with water in Hammanskraal, how do you react to the deaths of 15 people?
The death of any person, whether it's 1 or 15, is something that's very tragic, not just for us as a nation, but also for the families who are affected by this death. It's up to all of us, including the state, to actually make sure that we don't have or we don't lose another life to this cholera outbreak.
And how did you react when you heard, about this particular story in Hammanskraal, given the work that the Commission had done in that particular area over the years?
We didn't stop the work as a Commission once we released our report. We've been continuing to monitor the recommendations. The key stakeholders for the monitoring of this report being the City of Tshwane, as well as the Department of Water and Sanitation. Our last meeting with City of Tshwane being just last month in April, where we were looking at the action plan presented by the City of Tshwane, and as well as the costing of that action plan. So as the Commission, since the report has come out, we've continued to make sure that the recommendations that we actually put in place, the recommendations actually put in place could actually be implemented by the City of Tshwane. And
I'm going to come back in just a moment to that, because I'd like to know if, in your view, these recommendations have been implemented. But Ayesha, let me come to you. The issue of, this Rooiwal, wastewater treatment plant and the contamination issues around that particular area, as well as the, Apis River. Is it as complicated as it sounds of an operation of what needs to be done there to ensure that we do have quite a stable supply and water quality improves?
Thanks, Bongiwe. Yes, I think it is an issue not just for Tshwane, but for all of the municipalities that are actually receiving raw water from rivers, which are downstream of wastewater plants that are not operational. So the issue is, when you abstract water from a river, you can treat it to potable standards very easily with technology that we have readily available. However, if you're abstracting water from a river that is so polluted, you are basically abstracting wastewater. The conventional treatment plants don't work. So you need advanced processes. You need to employ much more advanced processes like the use of ozone or other technologies that are more expensive. So we have to be very cognizant of the type of water that we have in our rivers that we're using to treat, or else it's going to cost us a lot of money to get it to the potable state. So
is it a contamination possibly from one source, or could it be multiple sources in this regard?
Okay, in the river, the monitoring in the river always picks up what is happening upstream. There's a lot of information about what is currently happening in the river there, and that is directly due to the Rooiwal wastewater treatment works that has been dysfunctional for a number of years, and that it contributes towards the poor quality of the water. So we know that is an issue in that area. Whether the treatment plant is operational or not, I am not sure of that, so I cannot comment on that. But I think an important question also to raise here is that there's two things when you look at the water quality that comes out of the taps. It would be evaluated for specific contaminants, and that would be E. coli, not cholera, but E. coli. Now, if you find E. coli in your water, that would say that possibly the treatment process is not working, and you would also possibly end up with cholera that is coming through the river into the taps. Whether that is the case, I don't know, but it can be verified by the City of Tshwane to indicate if the water coming out of the taps actually is chlorinated, disinfected, or does it have pathogens? Because it can be any kind of pathogens, viruses, bacteria, the cholera, or even, parasitic pathogens like the Giardia and Cryptosporidium, which can cause serious illnesses.
So, Ayesha, I'd like to get that because, it's a very critical point that you raise. I know conclusively we cannot say that this is the case, but are you saying that if the water quality isn't great, then there's E. coli that could potentially lead to, possibly cholera? Is it something that is not, far-fetched and may have possibly happened here? I know that there are still investigations, but it is a possibility to comprehend.
If you look at the water quality and you see there are pathogens in the water, including E. coli, then there is a great chance there's other pathogens and it could be cholera. But a simple test would tell them, is there cholera in their final water? So when they sample their final water, all they have to do is sample for cholera as well, and they will know that's the source. It could be externally because, one of the issues that we have is there's cholera in the rivers and people may be using the rivers for baptisms, or they may be using boil water that could be contaminated. Just a thing to add on there, Bongiwa. Currently in the Hammanskraal area, as far as we know what's in the media, the water treatment plant is supplying water, but it was classified as not fit for human consumption. So the boil water, the notice was that use the water for bathing and washing, but not for drinking. And the drinking water, according to the City of Tshwane, is coming via tankers that is supplied from a reservoir that comes from rainwater, and we can be sure that water coming via the tankers is chlorinated and clean. However, remember the distribution of this water by tankers. Clean water in a dirty tanker, what do we end up with? We end up with possible another source of contamination. And if somebody handles that tanker or discharges the water into a container and they already have cholera, or they've been in contact with somebody with cholera, and there is that contamination by hand or by contact with feces, you can end up getting cholera from that source as well. If the tanker hasn't been disinfected, if your utensils that you collect the water hasn't been disinfected. So I think we need to understand where that cholera is coming from, and then it's easy to put in place some mitigating measures.
Sure. Zamantungwa, listening to what Ayesha just says, and one thinks about some of, the measures that, should have been put in place to ensure that things are running smoothly in this particular regard. You alluded to an action plan, and you say that you had a meeting with the City of Tshwane as recent as last month in order to check on the progress. Are you happy with the progress thus far?
We can't be happy with the progress if we have the outbreak that we currently have. The current situation, as said by Ayesha, things that are well documented as well in our report about the quality of water, and we cannot say that we're happy about anything if we still have the potential for such an outbreak happening. What's most important right now, though, is to make sure, as Ayesha just said, is that what is the temporary or what is the short-term plan that the City of Tshwane will be implementing to make sure that the current water tanks actually have good quality water, and that they actually provide additional tanks for these. And you'll actually think about where instances where water is not easily accessible. What is the people who are detained in the correctional the police stations in the area, children who are in school? We have to make sure that in all of these places and the clinics in the area, that the water that is currently available, that has been provided by the tanks, is actually drinkable, and that also the water that's going to be put in and brought into Hammanskraal following this incident is going to be is of good consumption. But our report, as it stands, and the recommendations that we put in were there so that we don't have this particular incident, this situation we're talking about. And we need a collaboration between the City of Tshwane and the Department of Water and Sanitation to make sure that not only these water treatment wastewater treatments that are available now, that they're actually working, but that all of them, I think there are 15 in total, Ayesha can correct me, that they're all running, and not just now that we have the outbreak, that measures are being put in, but that they're long-term that are put in place.
Zama, pardon me for coming in there. We're almost out of time, but who then takes responsibility for these deaths from the view of the Human Rights Commission?
It's difficult to say right now because, as Ayesha said, that we have to find out where the source of the problem is. From our report, we've listed a number of stakeholders who form part of this, being the Department of Water and Sanitation nationally, being the City of Tshwane as a municipality, even to some extent, COPTA is having to put all of these departments to make sure that they're all working together, to make sure that all of these problems that have been highlighted for years are actually handled and sorted out. Now, is it the time to be pointing fingers? Maybe it's not now, but I would say that for us as the Commission is to make sure that the water that's going to be provided and rolled out over the next 2 days actually reaches the members of the community, because the water that's currently before them, they don't know whether they can drink it or not.
In about 10 seconds before I move back to Ayesha for a final word, then what becomes the recourse from your vantage point, legally speaking, for this particular community?
From a legal standpoint, it depends on a number of factors. We have to draw the causal nexus between this outbreak from the source of where they actually got where the people who are affected actually got the source of water, and from there you'll be able to draw a liability. Is it from a source be maintained by the City of Tshwane? Is it supposed to be a source that was supposed to be maintained by the Department of Water and Sanitation? All of these things are tied to the fact that these water treatment facilities are not being maintained. Studies are not being done on a constant, and these studies and the reports are not going out, and the effects, the people that it affects are the people who live in Hammanskraal. So we'll have in the City of Tshwane, DWS, who takes responsibility for this current outbreak once we find out where the outbreak actually came from.
Especially because right now we keep on hearing about, some are saying, no, this predates us, the problem predates us, and others are saying, well, we are still, you can't say it predates us. So the blame game also continues. But Ayesha, you and I have spoken about water issues at some point and the quality of water and the blue and green drop reports and stuff. But someone watching tonight, and I remember you were sharing with us a website where someone can check the quality of their drinking water. But if they don't have the means to be able to do that and check on the website to see if their water is actually safe for human consumption, what can they do at home to ensure that they are able to then drink water that is not contaminated?
Thanks, Bongiwe. If you look at water quality with regards to pathogens, so whether it's cholera, whether it's E. coli or anything else, you can boil the water. That's the best solution. Boil your water till it's a rolling boil and then cool it down and drink it so nothing is living in it. That will protect you against those contaminants, anything that's alive. If you know what the water quality is, I would just like to say the water quality data is available to the Department of Water and Sanitation, to the municipalities, to everyone. There should be some kind of measures in place that immediately when there is water quality failures of a microbiological nature, that there is immediate action. But there isn't immediate action. And that, I think, is an issue. We wait for deaths and then we decide what we're going to do. It is very sad that in South Africa today, that so many people have died. I am devastated to say that we could have prevented this. The data is there. The data tells you that there is water quality failures, microbiological, in many municipalities in South Africa right now. And that information is publicly available. Who is going to act on this?
Ayesha, as you end off there, it really is something that, it is preventable. And I suppose a lot of South Africans are very upset about that because these are things that are not new and have been spoken about for so long. But let me thank you both for your time. Do appreciate it. And let's see what kind of mold this particular story takes, because there's quite a lot of layers here. That was Zamantungwa Mbeki, acting Gauteng Provincial Manager at the South African Human Rights Commission, as well as Ayesha. She's an environmental scientist at the HAL as a water there, and she's the director